What is up, Renaissance crew? I'm the original Renaissance man, Devon DaVinci, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Today I'm going to be getting into a video that kind of follows in line with the other video that I did. I believe it was called The Biggest News Stories of the Past 60 Years. I'll leave a card for that somewhere in this video so you can go and check that out. This video is kind of related to it. It's the biggest news stories from the year you were born. So I believe it goes back to all the millennial years, so like around 1983, 1982 to possibly current. I don't know if it goes into like the tens and stuff, but in case it does, this video should be for a lot of, well, I'm not sure if my demographic is that young, but if it happens to be, hello, I hope you've written your letter to Santa Claus. I hope that you've been a good boy this year or a good girl this year, because Santa Claus is coming in a couple of days. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into this video, see what it has to offer, and well, I'll just leave the rest of the comments for afterwards.
Thanks to the benefit of hindsight, it's pretty easy to distill any given year into a single world-changing headline. With that in mind, here are the biggest news stories from the year in which you were born. While war and chaos spiraled out of control around the globe, most folks back home in America weren't paying much attention, because 1983 was also the year that Michael Jackson finally debuted the video for his 1982 single Thriller. Thriller was the first music video to get a budget of $1 million. It was also the first to be directed by a bona fide movie director, namely John Landis. When it premiered in December, the world went nuts, and we're still talking about it today.
Come on, I'll take you home.
In a year filled with
I'm gonna say something that's kind of controversial. I actually don't really like the Thriller music video that much. I prefer Remember the Time. For me, Remember the Time is the best music video he's made. There's a few of them that I would put on that list, honestly, ahead of Thriller. Thriller would probably just be cracking my top 5 Michael Jackson music videos.
Sectarian strife, assassination, and murder, India's worst disaster came when an industrial accident in the town of Bhopal killed more civilians than 9/11. The Bhopal chemical disaster remains the worst industrial accident in history. A screw-up at the U.S.-owned Union Carbide pesticide plant resulted in a cloud of toxic gas escaping into the city, where it killed somewhere between 3,800 and 16,000 people and left hundreds of thousands permanently disabled. Most of them are still fighting for compensation.
Yeah, this is my first time ever hearing about this. The last video I did, people were criticizing it a little bit because the video itself didn't have a lot of international incidents, which is true. There was a lot of things in there that it didn't really go into stuff that happened overseas or mainly places outside of America. So you guys let me know how well this list does as far as like the biggest news stories of that year.
By the 1980s, Soviet premiers were dropping like flies. Konstantin Chernenko's death in 1985 came only 13 months since the passing of the last leader, Yuri Andropov. The ascension of Mikhail Gorbachev may not have seemed all that exciting at the time, but its importance cannot be understated in hindsight. Gorbachev's reforms opened up Soviet politics to a range of new and radical ideas, while simultaneously crashing the economy, a combination which historically is almost guaranteed to lead to revolution. Hang on for a few more years if you want to see the payoff. In the early hours of April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear plant exploded. It was the worst nuclear accident in history.
We were recently stricken by a disaster, the Chernobyl nuclear power accident. It deeply affected the Soviet people and disturbed world opinion.
49 people were killed during the event itself, while somewhere around 4,000 deaths are attributable to radioactive fallout. 340,000 were permanently evacuated from their homes. Vast swaths of Ukraine and Belarus are still uninhabitable today. The Iran-Contra story...
Oh, let me stop it. First of all, if you want to hear this without me interrupting all the time, watch the original video. This is a reaction, so I'm going to give you my impressions of every single point where I feel like I need to step in. The Chernobyl incident is an extremely fascinating incident. You guys, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, go and watch. I'm not sure the exact name of the documentary, but they have documentaries all about it. Like there's this bit of chemicals that's in like the basement of Chernobyl, or one of the houses in the Chernobyl, and it's called the elephant's foot. It is fascinating, but it's also kind of creepy. So if you have a chance to, be sure to check out any doc. Just type in the elephant's foot Chernobyl or something like that, and I promise you it'll pop up. Just check that out, and I promise you will have you'll have something to talk about. Let's put it that way. It's a fascinating story.
After the Iranian-linked group Hezbollah took a number of American hostages in the mid-'80s, President Reagan secretly agreed to trade arms with Iran in exchange for their freedom. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, however, used a portion of the proceeds from the weapons sales to fund right-wing Contra rebels fighting against the Nicaraguan government. Obviously, this isn't exactly legal. The story broke in November '86, but it was in '87 that it really exploded. 14 Reagan staffers were eventually charged, although George H.W. Bush later pardoned 6 of them. As Pan Am Flight 103 passed over the small Scottish town of Lockerbie on December 21, 1988, a bomb smuggled aboard by a Libyan terrorist exploded. The aircraft blew apart, killing all 259 on board and raining fiery wreckage onto the town, leading to the deaths of 11 more people. To this day, it remains the deadliest terror attack on EU soil. But it wasn't until July 1990 that anyone admitted Pan Am 103 had been brought down deliberately, and Libya wasn't named as the culprit until 1991. The fall of the Berlin Wall on the night of November 9th turned out to be the death knell for the Soviet Union.
This is
After
my
the wall
year.
came down, revolution sprung up in communist Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, and Romania. In 1990, Ukraine and Estonia followed suit. By 1991, the Soviet Union had been consigned to history. Yugoslavia was disintegrating, West and East Germany had been reunited, and democracy had taken hold from the Baltic to the Adriatic.
Your government seems to be changing every day. Where do you think it's going?
That's the government's problem, he says.
See, I was always under the impression that the biggest news story in 1989 was the Exxon Valdez spill. I didn't know that the wall came down in '89. For some reason, I combine it with the fall of the Soviet Union. I think that was like 1991. So, like I said, I thought the Exxon thing was the biggest thing in my birth year.
All in all, it was one of the most important events of the 20th century. Nelson Mandela wasn't informed about his own impending release until the night before it took place. According to NPR, he was so taken aback by the news that he asked to stay for another week. But the government refused, and Mandela, after 27 years in prison, found himself with fewer than 24 hours to prepare for the biggest moment of his life. Mandela's walk to freedom has become nothing short of iconic.
Mr. Mandela, who has walked his first steps to freedom into a new South Africa, now on his way to Cape Town.
It was the event that sparked the beginning of the end of 300 years of white minority rule in South Africa and gave the 90s a hell of a kickstart. In 1990, Saddam Hussein sent his troops across Iraq's southern border and annexed Kuwait. For the next half a year, US-led coalition troops massed along Kuwait's border. On January 16, 1991, the Gulf War kicked off.
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait.
Over the next 6 weeks, Iraq's armed forces were obliterated by the Allies. Iraq lost somewhere between 8,000 and 100,000 troops, while the coalition lost only 300. Perhaps even more significantly, it was this conflict which convinced Washington that invading Iraq in 2004 would be a cakewalk. In March 1991, Rodney King was dragged from his car by a group of LAPD officers and beaten for 15 minutes straight. A video of the beating went public shortly after, and the cops involved were put on trial. When the jury acquitted them in late April '92, Los Angeles exploded. Within 3 hours of the reading of the verdict, the city was engulfed by rioting and looting. The LAPD, woefully unprepared for the backlash, effectively abandoned the streets. 5 days of carnage followed, which saw thousands of businesses trashed, 1,000 buildings destroyed, 50 people killed, 2,000 injured, and 6,000 arrested.
All right. I just wanted to clarify something real quick also. On one of the videos that I did, which one was it? It was the Bill Burr white versus black athletes video I did. Towards the end, I made a comment about the O.J. Simpson trial and one of the reasons why the black community was happy that he got away. And it wasn't because, oh, well, we won something. It was the fact, a big major factor of it was that it was finally evident to white people that the system was screwed up. Because after years of black people being charged with stuff and getting thrown in jail without much evidence and when it came to like the civil rights era and stuff like that, with white people that committed like terrorist acts, you could say, like the bombing of the four little girls and the killing of the 3 civil rights activists and Medgar Evers and all these people who and Emmett Till and all these people who died, and the people that committed the crimes were pretty much acquitted by an all-white jury, or if they did get sentenced, they would only get like a couple weeks in jail. I didn't clarify exactly that also the Rodney King incident played into that also, because the cops that were charged with beating Rodney King for 15 minutes were acquitted, even though it was on videotape and everybody saw it. Now, there's arguments as to what exactly happened. I don't really care about the argument of, oh well, he was charging at him, and then okay, yeah, even if he did charge at him, which I'm willing to give you. I'm not really gonna say he did that, but even if he did do that, 15 minutes, beating him for 15 minutes. I think that's a bit excessive. That's the definition of police brutality in my book. But yeah, that's also another reason why they were like that's the reason why they were happy that OJ got off, because it was like, okay, well, y'all had somebody that got off, so now we got someone that got off. Like I said, it's fucked up that it had to go like this, because 2 people in the OJ case were dead and everything, and it's like it sucks that like their lives are pretty much used as like these symbols of, oh well, y'all lost some people and the people that committed it got away, but y'all did the same thing to us, and it's really fucking stupid. But that's just real. That's what I was saying.
February
Maybe I'll make
28th,
a video
1993,
about it one day.
ATF agents raided the compound of the Branch Davidians' religious sect outside Waco, Texas. The raid soon became a standoff and turned into a full-blown siege when the FBI got involved. For the next 51 days, the world watched as the Davidians tried to keep the feds at bay.
How many gunshots did you hear?
It was quite a few, you know. I couldn't really say how many it was, but he knew it was something that wasn't normal.
At 6 a.m. on April 19th, FBI agents fired tear gas into the compound, intending to storm it. Instead, however, the whole compound went up in flames. By the time the smoke cleared, at least 75 Davidians, including 25 children, were dead. Waco became a defining moment for the FBI and changed the public's perception of the federal government forever. On April 6, 1994, a plane carrying the Hutu president of Rwanda was shot down over the country's capital. Hutu extremists blamed the Tutsi ethnic group and instigated a genocide as revenge. In 100 days, over 800,000 people were killed in a series of systematic and efficient reprisals against the Tutsis. The names of those who were to be killed were read out on the radio, while lists and weapons were handed out to gangs. Since the government logged everyone's location, the militias tracked down their targets with ease. The Rwandan genocide finally ended on July 4th, when the Uganda-backed Tutsi RPF army captured Kigali. They subsequently invaded what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, sparking another major war that would end up killing 5 million people. Exactly 2 years to the day of the Waco fire, far-right extremist Timothy McVeigh enacted a vicious attack against the government by parking a truck filled with explosives outside a federal building in Oklahoma City. At 9:02 a.m., it exploded. The resulting death toll of 168, with several hundred wounded, remains by far the highest of any domestic terrorist attack in U.S. history. McVeigh was apprehended 90 minutes after the explosion on a lonely highway south of Oklahoma City. His execution in 2001 was the first to be enacted by the federal government in nearly 40 years. On February 29, 1996, Bosnian Serb forces finally lifted their siege of Sarajevo. At 1,425 days, it still remains modern warfare's longest siege. By this time, just under 120,000 people had been killed in the breakup of Yugoslavia. The lifting of the siege of Sarajevo, which came when Bosnia's Serbs finally abandoned the city, marked the beginning of the end of the conflict. 1997 was the year in which the world was stunned by the death of Princess Diana. On August 31st, she left the Ritz Hotel in Paris with her lover, Dodi Fayed, pursued along the streets of Paris by a gang of photographers.
I had a math teacher
lost control and slammed into a concrete pillar. Diana, Fayed, and their driver Henri Paul were all killed.
She dreamed of one day meeting Princess Diana.
Has in fact been killed in that car accident in Paris.
She cried
just a few
when
hours
she found out
ago.
that Princess Diana died.
Diana's death caused Britain to collapse in grief. It also nearly toppled the royal family,
who were just
a few hours ago. In fact,
killed.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed in that car accident in Paris just a few hours ago.
Diana's death caused Britain to collapse in grief. It also nearly toppled the royal family, who were criticized heavily for their perceived indifference to her passing. Vigils took place across the world, from South Africa to Israel to Russia, and pretty much everywhere in between. It's estimated that 2.5 billion people, almost half the world's population, watched her funeral. By the time the Good Friday Agreement was signed on April 10th, the Troubles in Northern Ireland had killed over 3,600 people and left another 50,000 injured. The 30-year conflict had seen massacres in Northern Ireland and led to a number of terrorist attacks across England, including one in 1984, which nearly killed Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. To end all that and create a stable, power-sharing government in Belfast was arguably one of the most remarkable political achievements of all time.
Well, if you didn't see your birth year in there, then that means that you weren't, I think they were only doing the millennial generation. So if your birthday isn't in there, then you're either before or after the millennial generation. It's crazy that we've entered a new generation and we didn't really realize it. Like millennials pretty much are considered grown-ups right now. So anyone born after that is, I believe they call it Generation Y. So at some point, once y'all get around the time y'all turn about, I want to say like 25 or so, they're going to give y'all a name also. So the only generation that didn't get a name was Generation X, and that's because Generation X sounds awesome. This video, it looks like it tackled a lot more international stories. There's still a lot of international stories I'd like to hear about because there's a lot of incidents that aren't really taught in American schools. America mainly does American history, and if there is international history, it tends to talk about the big milestone moments, you know, the world wars, big time leaders and figures like Alexander the Great and people like that, you know. But it's very hard to find history of other countries when it comes to like the smaller things, or at least things that don't necessarily affect America directly. They don't really teach too much about it. So you kind of have to go out of your way and search that stuff up yourself if you want to learn more about it. But yeah, I really do love watching these types of videos. The last video I did, the biggest news stories in the last 60 years, one of the reasons why I really enjoyed watching it was because it gets news feeds of that event during the time that it's happening. So it shows like the commercials and or the TV show that was going on, and then the breaking news flash popping up and a person coming out and talking about it. I don't know if it talked about the death of Princess Diana, but I have seen clips of the news feed of when she passed away, and it was kind of like John F. Kennedy, where at first they broke the news and it was just like, oh, well, something happened to her. We don't really know what happened. There was a car accident. And then later on, as more information comes out, it's like, okay, well, we found out that she's injured and she's in critical condition. And then next, you know, later on they found out, oh, well, we just learned that she did in fact die. It was like I said, it was very much like John F. Kennedy. Also, for some reason, well, I was about to talk about the other events that wasn't in the 60 years video, but you'll have to check that yourself and tell me what clips you think should have been in it. One clip that I remember watching online also, and they also had like a mini documentary about it, was the death of John Lennon, because his news, the death of his, or the news of his death. I said the death of his news. The news of his death was. It was presented during a American football game, and they were doing this documentary. I forgot exactly what it was called, but they were like, it was Howard Cosell and it was some other broadcasters, and it was during a commercial when somebody in their newsroom came in and said that John Lennon had died, and so they have like this audio clip during that commercial where they're asking like, one second, let me go ahead and, all right. Where they have this little audio clip where the broadcasters are like going back and forth, like, okay, well, should we break this news? Should we let people know about it? Okay, when do you want me to say it? What do you want me to say? And things like that. So you hear like the like Howard Cosell going, okay, well, I'm going to say this, and do you think this would be okay? Should I add this into it? And then the audio, or not the audio, the commercial ends, and then the show comes, or the game comes back on, and then you hear them like, okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, sports brings us together, and it's something but there's something you always have to remember, that you know, bad things happen and death happens, and I've just been told that, you know, he goes into it and everything, and it's crazy when you like watch it, because like I said, it almost like it brings you back into that moment. Like you see the commercials and the TV shows and things, and then you hear like you put yourself in the shoes of the people that are watching that sporting event or that TV show or something, and it's like, oh man, this is like, they don't realize, or they probably do realize at the time, but just how big this event was. Like, god damn, John Lennon died. It's crazy. Like, it's the same way I felt about Michael Jackson. When Michael Jackson died, I remember my mother, she told me that there was like a news crawl on one of her shows she was watching, and it said that Michael Jackson was in cardiac arrest. And so I'm like in denial, like, oh no, he's not gonna die. And she's like, no, cardiac arrest means his heart stopped. He's dead. I'm like, no, you can still come back from cardiac arrest. And then it wasn't until like I got on the internet and I saw on TMZ and it said that Michael Jackson was dead. I've never cried for anybody outside of my family, except for that one moment. Like, Michael Jackson was the only person that I like actually cried for. And when I think back, it's like, damn, that I wonder, like, he had that big of an effect on me, because I never cried for anybody else outside of like my immediate family passing away. So it was just, I don't know, it's crazy. And then like you go back and watch those events, and it's like, man, I remember where I was when I saw that. But anyway, that's been this video. It's gone on long enough. I've paused it enough. If you want to see the original video uninterrupted, it's in the link in the description box down below. This video was done by Grudge. I have the link for Grudge at the end of this video, so you can click on that and go directly to their their channel and subscribe and like the video and everything. And I will have a card in this video that will let you watch the biggest news stories of the last 60 years that you can check out. It's another reaction from me. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. I'm the original Renaissance man, Devon DaVinci. I'm going to go ahead and move on to another video. Hopefully I'll see you guys there. Give me the deuces. Peace.